My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review for Beyond Two Souls. And this is a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't played it, go and play it, then come back and watch my review because I will be going in depth. And I'm not going to talk about every choice I made. I'm going to talk about this game the best I can while giving details about what I liked and didn't like about it. It is going to be a bit of a mess. It's going to be loosely structured, but hey, so is this game, so let's just give it a go. I loved finding out what this game was about. Like, I knew nothing about the plot. And to find out it's this supernatural story of this girl who had these abilities and everything that she goes through, I just loved finding all this stuff out. I loved discovering Aiden and what he can and can't do, and I just thought the structure of this game does a really great job of getting you involved right from the get-go, and I loved that element of it. There was one mission pretty early on where you go to the embassy, and you gotta find out what's on these papers, and well, Jodie goes to the bathroom, she's controlling Aiden to find out what's on those papers. But I thought my ending of this story was so weird. Like, she's writing out what's on the papers, and then all of a sudden this random woman comes into the bathroom, takes all of her notes, and then just leaves. And it's never brought up again. So I don't know what I have to do differently to get a more satisfying conclusion to this section, but I wasn't happy with my version of this storyline. I loved the party chapter though. I thought that was really great. It kind of reminded me of Carrie, but in a very great way. And yeah, you better believe I took my revenge. Pfft, who the hell wouldn't take the revenge in this moment? Like, that would be the most boring story ever if you didn't. Like, you had to. But I did find it to be a bit comedically over the top. Like, the girl at the birthday party is opening all her gifts, and then she opens Jodie's gift, and she gives her an old book filled with poems, and then she's just like, you come to my party, and you give me this shit, and then everybody starts calling her a slut, and I'm just like, what the hell's happening here? Like, all you did was give her a book filled with poems, but my goodness, these kids were so nasty, but I did love this section. I did love watching Jodie's and Nathan's relationship, and when you find out more about Nathan's past as the game progresses, it starts to make a lot more sense. Jodie was someone who didn't really have a mom and dad who loved her, and Nathan lost his wife and his kids, and how these two kind of found each other and had some sort of a surrogate father and daughter relationship, and I love that aspect of the game. But I also love the friendship between Jodie and Cole. I thought that was a really great element as well, and I did get invested in them. The training sequence is actually really smart because it's a great way to introduce certain controls to the player through a training montage. Like, it just makes perfect sense. That said, it is a little overlong though, but still a pretty decent sequence. I love finding out about the monsters in the infra world through these flashbacks. Well, Jodie's injured and you're just like, oh, I didn't do that to her? Like, is he actually bad? But no, it's the monsters. And I love kind of the build-up you get to what's really going on in the infra world. I think that's well handled. And I love the entire section on the train. Jodie's on the train, she's going to the next place, and then the police come on board and they chase us through the train onto the roof. It just had this like epic feel to it, and then she jumps off and she's getting chased through the woods. I just absolutely loved the atmosphere here. The woods, the dark, the rain, and then how this section ends up playing out. Well, they have her at a movie theater, and she just wreaks havoc and destroys them all. Really great stuff. But one of my favorite sections is my imaginary friend. Just this area where you're Jodie as a kid, and you just really start to understand how she's been treated since she was a kid because of Aiden. Her adopted parents completely neglected her. She felt alone, she was isolated. She really just felt hopeless ever since she was a kid. And this one moment where she does find some kids to play with, the one kid starts being a dick to her, so then Aiden goes ahead and tries to kill this kid. And you just start to understand what this character has gone through ever since she was a kid, and how her parents didn't actually help her out. They didn't try to guide her. They felt her like a nuisance. They treated her like a nuisance, like an obstacle. And you just can't help but feel for her here. And then we get this section called the condenser, where Jodie has to go in the lab and turn off the machine and help these people out. And I did love this section. It kind of reminded me of Resident Evil, and maybe it's just because it takes place in a lab, but it just had those horror vibes that I really dug. And then the next section is maybe my favorite section in this entire game, and it's Homeless. Now, this might not be the most action-packed section, but I felt like this was the most emotionally moving. Like, just the fact that this group of homeless people take her in and they help her out when they see that she needs it. And it's just genuinely heartfelt. You know, there's a moment where Jodie tries to kill herself here, but Aiden doesn't let her. And you just feel that desperation she feels. The hopelessness she feels. And when you start to understand what she's gone through up until this point, it makes a lot more sense. And all the characters here, Stan, Walter, Jimmy, and Tuesday, all the voice performances brought so much warmth to them, and I really did love these characters. Now, when Tuesday started to have a baby, I was just like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. This is going to be a really lame moment, isn't it? And no, it's maybe my favorite moment in the entire game. Like, it's just filled with magic and heart, and the music elevates it too, and when Zoe's born, you feel moved. And then all the characters come in and they're like, oh my goodness, it's the cutest little thing. You know, you just get a sense of community with these people. And then they stop and look at Jodie and they're like, you did this. And you can just feel the love that they have for her. Ah, what a fantastic moment. It really is. And then the building catches fire and you get everyone out and you protect them. And I do love it when you get everyone out and they're like, oh, you saved us, Jodie. We'd be dead without her. But then Jodie's knocked out. She goes to the hospital. And this is the one section of this chapter that didn't work for me. Because they say that she was in a coma for months. And then the CIA just discovers that she's here. And of course, that's when she wakes up and decides to escape. Like, thank goodness they didn't discover that she was here one day before she regained consciousness, because then they would have had her. So that felt a bit contrived, but boy, the strength and the overall heart and emotion in this was just some phenomenal stuff. And I love seeing in the next chapter, well, she's just this little girl in this lab. Like, you just feel the feel that this character has. And then you get this one chapter called Like Other Girls, and this is when we see Jodie as a full-on bratty teenager, rebellious, but it also shows what a rebellious teenager could do if she had Jodie's powers. And like, what she does to Cole here is really awful. Like, she actually possesses a good friend of hers, and you can just tell that she knows what she's doing is wrong, but she goes ahead with it. And then to meet up with these friends at a bar. Now, I do want to say that the security at the Department of Paranormal Activity is absolutely awful, because how did they get past, like, everyone? Like, it was quite clear that Cole wasn't himself there, but whatever. Then she goes to the bar where none of her friends show up, and this sequence is just heartbreaking. Well, the guys at the bar see that she's alone, and it just reminds you here that she's just a kid. And what they try to do to her is just horrific, evil stuff, and just broke my heart. And of course, I got my revenge as Aiden, and yeah, rightfully so. All those people deserve to die here. This entire section was just fantastic. It just highlighted what a teenager could do if she had Jodie's powers, but it also reminded you of the fact that she is still just a kid and she shouldn't have to go through this stuff. You know, she was robbed of a normal life, and that's most highlighted here. Now, the next section, we see the adopted parents, Philip and his wife, dropping Jodie off. And man, Philip is such a dick. He's kind of like Philip K. Dick. That's a good joke. But, yeah, Philip's reaction here, like, yeah, Jodie was completely in the right to try to kill him here. Absolutely. Philip's just the worst. You know, in his last moments of him being in her life, that's just highlighted very clear here that he's the worst. Another great emotional moment. Navajo is a good chapter. I was kind of surprised by the length of it, because I wasn't expecting this section to be as long as it was. But it was a good section. Like, you end up meeting a bunch of characters. They're well-developed characters. And at first they're like, okay, you can stay the night, but then you go. But then Paul's like, if you want, you can stay here and work for us for a little bit. Like, we can't pay you, but we'll give you food. So then Jodie's like, yeah, I'll walk for you. So then she gets him a bucket of water. And then as soon as she does that one thing, he's like, okay, if you want, you can take a break and have lunch with my sons. And I'm just like, already? You've done nothing. You just got a bucket of water. Then she has lunch, and then she gets a bale of hay. And then that was it. That was her hard day's work. Unbelievable. Like, I'm no farmer. I don't know how much I'd be able to last in that environment. But my goodness, at least do more than getting one bucket of water and one thing of hay. Just unbelievable. But then anyways, you start to discover that there's this big old spiritual monster that attacks them each night. But they're also defended by this group of ghosts that of the family. So I did like the entire lore that's introduced here. It kind of introduces that more spiritual element of the Infraworld, which I really dug. But of course, Jodie wants to know what's going on and how she can help them. And the moment where you're discovering what happened to the ancestors through all the different memories, it's too much. Like, trying to get all these different memories was just excessive and overdone. But then anyways, you figure out how to stop this, you come up with this big ritual thing, and you find a way to defeat this spiritual monster, not before the grandma and the dad die. So there was some emotion there, but right before she leaves the ranch, they're just like, thank you for everything that you've done for us. And I get that she ended this decades-old course. I get that, and that was good of her, and I do think there's some genuine heart in this moment. But she also got your dad and grandma killed. Like, let's just be honest. But yes, I did really like this more. And then we get the separation chapter, which isn't long, but it is filled with emotion as Jodie's forced to say goodbye to Nathan and Cole. Really emotional stuff. And then we get the dinner section, which I like how it's trying to show kind of the typical struggles that a girl might go through. But I'm a bit iffy on this one, because I do like the fact that Aiden was trying to get Jodie away from wine, and I get that. But just where this date ended up going, you know, the choices I make, I didn't find to be satisfying. Like, I chose to kiss him, and then you end up making out with wine, and then Jodie has flashbacks of what happened and like other girls, and she can't go ahead with it, and wine leaves like a dick. And I just didn't find that to be a satisfying end to this chapter. I really didn't find it to be. I looked it up online and see what happens if you reject wine right from the get-go. And he's just like, you know, I think I'm just going to go. And that felt much more natural to me. So, yeah, just the choices I made here didn't really work for me. Night session, like I mentioned earlier, is when we find out what happened to Willem Dafoe's family. And it is very emotional stuff. But then we get the mission. And I'm a bit mixed on this one. I love sections of it. I love moments of it. But the gameplay itself feels just so repetitive. Just X, square, X. Like, it wasn't fun to play whatsoever, but the story is so strong here of Jodie meeting Salam as they make their way through this town on a mission, and then Jodie's mission ends up killing Salam's father. Really emotional stuff. Really fantastic stuff. I loved it. But the gameplay is just not fun at all. And then you're on a plane with wine where you find out that he manipulated you, and you're mad and you jump out the plane. Really fantastic stuff. Like, I love that entire element. And then we get Old Friends, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's old friends catching up. There's so much genuine heart between Jodie and Cole's character, and I loved seeing that. And then as we find out about Jodie's past and her muzzle, all that stuff just worked for me so much. There's so much emotion to it. It just makes Jodie's life feel inevitable from the get-go. That she was never meant to have power over her life. She was forced into a family that didn't love her, that was then meant to force her into the DPA. And then the DPA raised her up until the point where they could force her into the CIA. And then the CIA was meant to assign her. Like, she's had no choice in any of this, and she's been forced into it. And it just makes her entire life feel inevitable. After the CIA, they make her do something so horrific that makes her on the run, that they're after her. She's really had no freedom in her life, and it's just highlighted here. And everything that happened with her mom wanting her, loving her, and not being able to be a proper mother to her, It's tragic and filled with emotion. I loved all this stuff. And then we get reunited with Nathan, and you know, when we see the big office, I'm just like, oh, is Nathan going to be the villain? And I was really hoping he wouldn't be, but he still seems like the typical Nathan self. But you do get a sense of his true character here, which I thought was really well handled. And then we get the mission, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really like this stuff. I'm gonna be honest, this chapter to me is probably the weakest. I don't really think it was necessarily. But you go on this mission with Ryan and two other guys, and it cuts back and forth between later on in the story of you getting caught and tortured and the mission in present day. And I just felt like that back and forth didn't work at all. It just kind of made it feel messy. But then anyway, you discover this underwater base, you go in it, and this is definitely where it feels most James Bondish. And I didn't mind that, it just, I don't know, there's just something about the writing here that wasn't as strong as the chapters prior to it. You make your way through this base, and it's like a maze. Like, it took me way too long to discover what door leads where, and it did take me a while. But then anyways, you go ahead and you set up these bombs. Well, the rift is opening up. All these monsters are broken free quite conveniently, so you don't have to fight this entire army. And then you get into a fight with the main evil dude, and just the way this fight ends, I absolutely hate it, because you're fighting each other, it looks like he's going to win, and then one of the monsters gets him, and I don't find that to be a satisfying end. You make your way and try to escape with Ryan, and yeah, she set the bombs for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, my ass. That was not 3 minutes. That was like 10 minutes minimum, so I didn't really buy that. Then you go ahead and try to escape with Ryan, but it's not looking to be successful. You guys break free of the submarine, you make it up, and I like the discussion here between you and Ryan. I forgave him, and then he's like, I love you, Jodie. And then you get to choose if you say you love him back too. And I picked no. And then he's just like, oh, you're so pig-headed. And that was it. So then I looked up online what happens if you say yes, and that was much more satisfying. So it comes with this type of game, I guess. But I will say that by the end of this chapter, I did come to like Ryan more as a character. So if that was the goal of that chapter, then kudos, well done. But I still don't feel like the entire mission was needed. Like, if Jodie gets knocked out and she wakes up in Nathan's office, I feel like we could just skip the entire mission area and just cut to where we are now. I really do feel like that. But anyways, we find out that Nathan is grieving his wife and his kids so much that he wants to do a bunch of mad scientist stuff. And I love this reveal of his true character. It feels really well built up to it. It feels true to him. And when he's trying to bring them back, and then Jodie is able to talk as him, and she's like, stop it, Nathan, you're holding us. That was an excellent moment. And then Jodie gets knocked out, she's held captive by the CIA, and they're going to do to her what they did to her mom, and that just creates so much tension, like really evil stuff. And Nathan's just like, I'm going to go ahead and combine our two worlds so I can be with my wife and daughter. That was great stuff, it raised the stakes, and as Cole and Ryan try to save Jodie, just excellent thrilling stuff, really much so. And then just all hell's breaking loose, monsters everywhere, you're making your way through it. And you gotta turn off this device and you're making your way to it with Ryan, and I love the visuals here, the black sun. But then at least what happened to me is that you come across Nathan and you try to reason with him, and instead of killing you, Nathan decides to kill himself. And then we see him reunited with his family, and I despise that. What a stupid decision for that character. Like, it's trying to make him killing himself look to be a good deed. Like, they didn't tell him to live with the grief. They told him, if you kill yourself, you can be reunited with your wife and kid right now. I don't like that messaging at all. So I really hated the way that they ended that character. But then anyways, you get this reveal that Aiden's actually a twin brother of Jodie who died in the womb. Yeah, I'm okay with that reveal. It's just, it makes sense because it turns out that Jodie's able to communicate with the info world, you know, the world of the dead. So it makes sense that Aiden was once living. So I thought that was a great plot twist. Yeah, I'll go with twist, even though it's not really a twist. But then you get this moment where you can choose to die or you can choose to live. And anyone who chooses to die here, what's wrong with you? No, you choose life, always, come on. And then you get this amazing, amazing moment where Jodie realizes that she lost Aiden. Like, she can instantly feel the lack of his presence. And she's just like, Aiden? Aiden, and then she breaks into tears. The most emotional moment. Really terrific stuff. Like, amazing. But then we get the epilogue, which I'll admit is a bit of a mess. Like, I don't think we needed an explanation to the structure of the game, but then we get that amazing line of dialogue, how she wanted Aiden gone from her entire life. She always felt like he was a nuisance, that she ruined her life. And now she's like, and now that he's gone, I've never felt more alone. Amazing emotional stuff. But then I chose Wine because that just made the most sense on a narrative level, and I hated my ending. I really did. I looked them up. I looked all of them up. I guess Zoe's is the best ending, the most heartfelt. I just wish there was one ending that you couldn't choose all these different endings, but yeah. Like, I love that one line in the epilogue, but the epilogue itself is a bit of a mess. And they did the fade out, fade in too many times. And that sequel setup was definitely not needed, but I still really like this game. The first half is better than the second half. Homeless, My Imaginary Friend are the two sections that stand out the most to me, just the most emotional. But I just love how we get to see Aiden ruin almost every potential relationship Jodie thought she could have. Her parents, Wine, and the school friends. But then we've come to realize that they're all just bad people. And we've got to realize that Aiden wasn't the problem, they were. And he just knew that. So because of that, she always felt alone and she blamed Aiden for everything, but she didn't realize that Aiden really did have her back through every step of her life. The people who truly loved and cared for Jodie didn't just love her and saw how great she was, but they also appreciated Aiden. Aiden saves her life countless times and they had a real bond. And Jodie didn't appreciate him as much as she should have until he was gone. Just everyone uses her. You know, she didn't really have any real freedom. Her entire life felt inevitable. She had no say in everything. And there's so much tragedy to that. This is a game about life. How our pasts can seem inevitable. How we think our life would be better off without someone or something. How grief can overcome us. And how we got alone with the grief and pain. How we can't allow ourselves to turn into monsters. The importance of true friends, of true human connection. How we can help others and bring a joy to their life. Bring joy to their life, even if we can't do it into our own. It also focuses on mankind's self-destructive nature. And also, that at times the things that make us special can feel like a curse. It just encapsulates so much about life and all the joys and pain it can bring. And it does so perfectly while telling this story that focuses on the supernatural. The story and the characters all feel fully developed, and the amount of emotion here is just overwhelming. I really did come to care for these people. And it tests that time and time again, and it broke my heart on numerous occasions. Just a beautiful story about overcoming pain and being the best you can be. And I just absolutely loved so many elements of the story. Just really fantastic stuff is on display. But have you played Beyond Two Souls? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.